My name is Marty Durbin. I'm Senior Vice President of Policy and President of the Global Energy Institute here at the Chamber, and really delighted to be part of today's program, and even more delighted to be joined by Vicki Hollub. Vicki is the President and CEO of Occidental Petroleum, also known as Oxy, where she oversees their oil and gas, chemical, and midstream operations. I'm going to tell you, with a 40-year career at Oxy and a variety of technical and management responsibilities, took you all over the world. But also worth noting that currently she serves as chair of the World Economic Forum's oil and gas community and as part of the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative, which, if I understand correctly, is a global group of CEOs from the oil and gas industry focused on emissions reductions and other climate initiatives. And for those of you who keep track, she's a graduate of the University of Alabama, so roll tide, right?
Thank you for that.
Well, welcome, Vicki. I know we will get into the topic here on the roadmap to the energy transition and technological innovations. But first, we've heard a lot at this event about the opportunities that exist for this partnership between India and the United States. I thought it would be helpful if you could provide a little more a description of Oxy itself and what your near-term interest is in the Indian market.
Yeah, I'd say that I've been going to Davos now since I've been CEO, and in Davos, one of the great things about it is you can do a lot of networking. And so I was going to Davos when I got a request for a meeting from somebody that I didn't know. And so the more we investigated that company and that person, the more impressed I was. And it was an Indian company. And so I took the meeting, met with them, and was so intrigued by their vision for India that we started as a team doing more investigation and realized that that India has tremendous opportunities and has accomplished a lot over the years. Prime Minister Modi is so impressive, and all of the Indian employees we have are incredibly smart and very strategic. And so we thought that there could be ways that we could partner and help in India as we do in some other countries. And so that's where our idea came about. And again, the more we've learned about it, I recently took a trip over there and went out into the community to see some of the community work that's being done by one of the companies that we talked to. And it's just tremendous, not only how strategic, how technically advanced, and how much they have an incredible work ethic there, but they care about the community, and they want to do things, the companies there want to do things right, and they are doing things right, and they're paying back. Their companies are growing, but they're paying back to the community as they do it. I was really impressed with that, and that's the kind of character and culture that we like to work with and want to be a part of. So we see opportunities for us to get more involved, not just on the oil and gas side, if that opportunity comes up, but also with our chemicals business to help be a part of India being able to make their own products in country, as well as our low carbon strategy, where we believe that direct air capture and carbon capture from industry is going to be a big part of India's transition. And so we would be happy to be able to get the opportunity to do that.
Excellent. Well, let's turn to the transition piece here. I think we were talking last night at dinner with Assistant Secretary Pyatt, and we heard from Amos this morning as well. And I'll paraphrase, but the energy transition isn't going to be successful if India isn't a really strong partner here and leans in as they have been doing. So getting to I've often heard you refer to Oxy as a carbon management company now. But if we take a step back, we hear about carbon capture and sequestration, CCS, and I'm not sure everybody really knows what that means or what it is. And I know that Oxy's got decades of experience in using carbon capture and utilizing it through enhanced oil recovery. Maybe describing a little bit about how Oxy's worked in that space and how that's kind of helped focus the direction you've been taking the company.
Yeah, I'd say that we've been using CO2 for enhanced oil recovery for 50 years. And enhanced oil recovery is a process where you take CO2, you inject it into an oil reservoir, and it then energizes the oil and helps produce more out of a reservoir than otherwise would be produced. So CO2 provides, just like in a Coke, when you open a Coke and you have that CO2, that energy that comes out, hopefully not with the fluids, but in the reservoir, it kind of energizes it to the point where it does make it pop out of some of the micropores so that you get more oil out of those reservoirs. And in the same process, it has the energy, lowers viscosity. And so enhanced oil recovery is a way to produce more out of reservoirs than you otherwise would, whether it's a conventional or a shale reservoir. So doing that here in the United States has given us a lot of knowledge about how CO2 behaves. And so we know that we have a lot more that we can do, use for the CO2 for. We actually have a shortage of CO2 for our enhanced oil recovery operations. So that's what kicked off our strategy to find ways to get more CO2. So we naturally evolved into looking at capturing CO2 from industrial sites to get the anthropogenic CO2. But as we saw how difficult that could be and having to work out partnerships to make that happen, we came across a technology called direct air capture technology, which extracts CO2 out of air. And so that is a process that we then realized could enable us to control our own destiny with respect to developing more of that and accomplishing several things from it. One is reducing CO2 out of the atmosphere, which is very much needed since there's 50% more CO2 in the atmosphere today than in pre-industrial times. Reducing that CO2 from the atmosphere is a part of the UN's model, which the IPCC believes has to happen in a big way, otherwise we won't achieve the goal of the Paris Accord. So it's critically important for that. And so with that, we're able to, again, conduct our business in a way that will ultimately, with using that CO2 in oil reservoirs, part of that CO2 for each cycle that you put the CO2 through the reservoir, more of it becomes sequestered so that eventually you can sequester all of the CO2 that you capture. So sequestration in oil reservoirs to us is the way our company, the industry in the world needs to go ultimately to produce oil that actually can be net zero or net negative. And so it's a process that's critically important, we believe, for the transition.
So you're taking a technology you've been using for 50 years and now putting yourself at the cutting edge of technology needed to meet the emissions goals. You used the term a net zero barrel of oil, and I know when I first saw that, when you had made that commitment, I thought, well, that's ambitious, and really putting yourself over there. Maybe describe a little more. What does it mean to have a net zero barrel of oil? I know you've got customers that are buying them as well.
Yeah, net zero barrel of oil means that you have injected more CO2 to get that oil than that oil will emit when used. And so some reservoirs will be net zero, some reservoirs will be net negative in that you'll be able to sequester more CO2 than a lot more than what it emits when used. So net zero and net negative barrels of oil to us is the least expensive sustainable aviation fluid that the world can make now or even in the future. So it's an important part of the transition. And because it's net zero or net negative, there are airline companies as well as maritime companies that are interested in generating their jet fuel from that net zero oil rather than buying carbon offsets for their emissions.
And let's move that back to direct air capture, which you mentioned as well. Again, big machines that are literally sucking carbon dioxide out of the air, and then you can either utilize it for whatever or sequester it. You've broken ground on the first facility at scale in Texas, and so maybe you talk about a little bit about the plans there, but also this is an area where we get to whether it's net zero. We look at carbon offsets. I can't imagine there's a more credible offset than literally pulling it out of the air and putting it in the ground. So there's got to be some market opportunities here as well.
Yeah, there are definitely some opportunities there. And this direct air capture facility that we're building in the Permian, the first one that we've broken ground on will extract 500,000 tons of CO2 out of the atmosphere. Now, there are some other direct air capture technologies in existence today, but the largest one to date that extracts CO2 out of the atmosphere only extracts 4,000 tons per year. Ours will extract 500,000 for the first plant. Subsequent plants will extract 1 million tons of CO2 out of the atmosphere. And the important thing to know about it in terms of the synergies that our chemicals and oil and gas business have for this direct air capture, and the reason that we can do it, and we think we can do it more economically and technically better than others, is that the fluid used to extract the CO2 out of the air as the air is pulled through a contact tower is a fluid that our chemicals business makes. It's potassium hydroxide, and we're the largest marketer of potassium hydroxide in the U.S., second largest in the world. And the diffusers within the contact tower that make the air mix so well with the potassium hydroxide is made of PVC, and our chemicals business makes the PVC. So with our oil and gas business having all this experience, 50 years of handling CO2, with our chemicals business and what they provide in terms of the materials that we need to make the extraction work, it's very synergistic with what we've been doing. We have infrastructure in the Permian, 2,500 miles of CO2 pipeline, 12 CO2 processing plants. So we have the capability to make this work anywhere. And so that's also our interest in India, is trying to find partnerships where we can make this happen in India in a big way as well.
Fascinating technology and opportunity. Getting to the concept of transition, we talk about an energy transition is always out there. I know I've heard you discuss the idea about needing, it's an emissions transition. Again, it's about reducing emissions. It doesn't really matter what the fuel is if there are no emissions with that. I've also heard a concept that instead of energy transition, that we need to be talking about an energy addition because of the growing demand that we're going to see, not just from India, from many other economies around the world. But welcome, you're addressing both the emission side of that and the role you think that Oxy is playing in that broader energy addition. We've got to be able to do both, to provide for the energy security and transition.
Yeah, I definitely believe that that what we need to be addressing are the emissions. And I think every country in the world should be able to use their natural resources. You should take advantage of those natural resources to improve the quality of life in your country. And India needs to do this and is doing that. So if you look at it being just about the emissions, then you can start to figure out what do you do about those emissions. And direct air capture is one way to address it. Carbon capture from industry is another way to address it. And then going to the energy addition, adding the renewables and adding thermal, adding nuclear ultimately. It's all about adding and not taking away resources that otherwise could be very helpful to the country and the people.
I mentioned your role, and you talked a little bit at World Economic Forum, but your thoughts. I'll pull a couple of different concepts together here. And, so you've got global coordination going on among the industry, and of course we got COP28 coming up, which is again another incredible opportunity to be able to point to solutions, to point to what companies are actually doing and the investments that are being made. I wonder if you couldn't address that as well.
Yeah, what we're trying to do is at the World Economic Forum is pull together representatives from all the industrial sectors to work together toward a plan to put together something that's more realistic in terms of a climate transition. To be honest, some have transitioned too quickly. Europe has transitioned too quickly without really understanding the risk of that transition. And there are many that think that oil and gas should go away and that coal should go away. But if you look at the plan about how to keep those fuels that are so important for for developing the quality of life for people, not just in the United States, but around the world. When you look at that and you start to put together the plan on how to make the energy transition work and the emissions mitigation work, it's really through these other technologies. It's by taking what we are developing today and applying it directly to the emissions and working across sectors to get everybody involved, the users of our product, the transportation industry, the industrial industry, steel, cement, the power generation industry. And that brings up another thing that technology we have, which is called net power. We're an equity owner in this technology. It's incredibly important for the power industry. And then it takes hydrocarbon gases, combust it with oxygen instead of air, so it doesn't release any volatile organics as a part of that process. In fact, it generates CO2 in water, fresh water, and so that CO2 drives the turbine to produce electricity. This can be used anywhere, and movement toward this kind of technology, it's another type of technology that will also, I believe, be a key part of our transition to a lower carbon economy. And with respect to carbon management company, we use that term for ourselves because we can not only help to mitigate our own carbon footprint, we can help others to mitigate their carbon footprint as well by building these facilities that give them the ability to buy carbon reduction credits to offset their carbon footprint. So whatever the fuel that you're using, if you can offset those emissions, you should be able to continue using that fuel, and we provide the way to get those offsets.
We often say around here that we should and we can and we should be as ambitious as we can be as far as emission reductions and what have you. But we're not going to get there if we don't have the technology, the policy, and the market signals so that the private sector will make those investments. Hearing you lay out what Oxy is doing, and obviously many of your industry peers are doing other things as well, it gives me great hope that technology really is going to help us find those sustainable solutions, and it's leveraging that technology. So I guess as a final word, just kind of bringing it back around to India, of course. Kind of final words on how you see the relationship building, not just U.S. to India, but obviously Oxy's role in there as well.
From what I've seen in the companies we've talked to, there's never been greater interest in trying to form these partnerships, and which is why I was glad to be a part of this this conference and hearing others talk about it and being a part of the U.S.-India Business Council. These are exciting times for the U.S. and for India because the relationship needs to work for the world to be able to accomplish the things that we need to accomplish. And there's certainly a desire from companies both in India and the United States to partner to do things that will help both countries achieve the goals that are so important for the rest of the world.
Excellent. Well, Vicki, on behalf of the U.S. Chamber, on the India Business Council, really a joy to have you have us here today, and just fascinated to hear everything that Oxy is doing in this space. So please join me in thanking Vicki Hollub for joining us.
Thank you.